Civics is not just memorizing the three branches of government. It's about learning how power works, how rights are protected, how decisions get made, and the responsibilities that come with living in a republic. I'm Matt Hasquin, a high school history, government, and civics teacher at a small rural public school, high school in South Central Illinois. And this is question number 2 within civics questions that are worth answering. And today's question comes from one of the most important phrases in American political history. And the question is, what does consent of the governed really mean? And as we get close to the 250th anniversary here, this of course is very important and topical and poignant. But when we go to the Declaration of Independence, in the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson wrote that governments are created to secure rights and that they get their just powers from the consent of the governed. Now, that phrase is easy to repeat. You may find it in comment sections online when there's political discourse or discussion. But the really tricky part about it is it's really more difficult to live out that particular statement, because at its core, consent of the governed means that government gets its legitimate authority from the people it governs. It doesn't get it from a king, not from a ruling family, not from the military, not from wealth or tradition or force. It comes from the people. And that was really a radical idea in 1776 when Jefferson put pen to parchment. It meant that government was not supposed to stand above the people as their master. It was supposed to be created by the people as their servant. Now, the consent of the governed does not mean that every person agrees with every law. And that would be impossible, of course, because in a society, people will disagree about taxes and schools and roads and courts and policing and voting and religion and speech and property and public safety. Consent of the governed does not mean that there will be unanimous agreement. It means people have a meaningful role in creating and changing and limiting and holding government accountable. In a republic, that happens through elections, representation, constitutional limits, public debate, peaceful protest, jury service, local participation, and the rule of law. It also means that government power has to be answerable to the people. If leaders can make decisions without elections, if they can ignore the law or punish disagreement, silence criticism, or stay in power no matter what the people want, then consent of the governed becomes an empty phrase. But there's another important part of this idea. Consent of the governed is not simply majority rule. A majority can win an election, but that does not give the majority unlimited power. Because in the American system, the people govern through constitutional rules. And that means majority rule is balanced by minority rights and by individual liberties and due process and limits on what the government is allowed to do. I'm going to backtrack here real quick. And by minority, I'm not talking about religious or racial or ethnic minority. I'm talking about the minority of opinion when it comes back to the majority rule, which would be the majority opinion. And so finding the balance in all those things, like minority rights, individual liberties, due process, all that stuff, that balance is not always easy. Too few limits in a system like this, and the majority can trample the rights of individuals or unpopular groups. And that is one of the most central tensions of American civics. How do we let the people govern while also protecting people from the misuse of government power? And the answer is not always simple, but the principle matters. Government should not rule merely because it has power. Government should rule only when its power is lawful and limited and accountable and rooted in the people's consent. And this is why voting matters. This is why free speech matters. This is why peaceful transfer of power matters. This is why local government is so important and matters. This is why citizens need to understand the system that they happen to live under. That's the purpose of civics education. Because consent of the governed is not automatic. It has to be maintained, it has to be practiced, and it has to be defended by citizens who understand both their rights and their responsibilities. So, what does consent of the governed really mean? It means that legitimate government depends on the people. Not just once in history in the past, on July 4th of 1776, and not just on Election Day with November 3rd, 2026 coming up. It depends on continually depends on the participation, accountability, the law, and civic responsibility that people are willing to undertake. The real question is not whether government has power, because like I said in the last video, government always has power. The real question is whether that power still answers to the people. And this was another civics question that was worth asking. And if you're here through the entirety of the video, thanks very much. You're like 3% of the people who happen to watch my videos. But if you're here for the too long didn't watch answer to the question to what does consent of the governed really mean, well, it does not mean everyone agrees with every law. It means legitimate government gets its authority from the people and remains answerable to them through elections and rights and law and participation and accountability. Thanks for watching.